Hello and welcome to In the Growth Space. I'm David McGlennon and I'm your host. I am really glad that you're here with me today. I really appreciate you taking the time. It's really nice to be able to share time together here on the podcast. And I know that sometimes it's for me anyway, it feels like a one-way street. And I would love it if you shared some feedback with me, get in touch with me. You can always reach me at david@davidmcglennon.com. I would love it also if you went out and rate and review the podcast. The reason why I want you to do that is because it helps us to be able to expand our reach. And we want to be able to help more leaders, more business owners, more leaders in organizations all over the world. We just found out that we have a contingent that listens in Australia. How cool is that? We have people that listen in Alaska. We have people that listen in Jamaica. It's amazing. So we're really grateful for all of you who are listening and tuning in. Whatever platform you're on, whether you're on Apple Podcasts or you're on Spotify, or maybe you're watching on YouTube. And if you are watching on YouTube, hello, hey, thanks for joining us. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button so that you subscribe to the channel. Hit the little bell there as well so that you're notified when we upload new content and new episodes. Really would appreciate it. So go ahead and hit pause and go do that right now. Did you do it? All right, I hope so. Thank you, really, from the bottom of my heart. It means a lot to us, and it really means a lot to our team here at Impact Leadership Consulting as well. So today's episode is all about developing emerging leaders, and really all leaders for that matter, but emerging leaders in particular. And one of the reasons why I want to cover this is that I've recognized that there's a lot of leaders in organizations today that have never really had the practical steps to begin the process of developing other leaders. Sometimes people are promoted into a level of leadership or a role of leadership, and they've never been given the skills to actually lead other people and develop other people. They don't even know what that means. So that's our goal here today. Our goal is to really give you some practical steps to begin the process and to be able to understand what's involved in developing emerging leaders and really why to do it. And the reality is that if a company has a goal or it has a desire to grow, maybe even scale. And next week's episode is going to be for you if you have a goal to scale. We've got a great guest coming, so stay tuned for that. That's why you should subscribe. But if they have a goal to grow, they have to get their people to grow as well. Because, matter of fact, next week when we talk to our guest, Stephen Adele, he's going to share with you the fact that the people are our constraint. People in our business are our constraint. So if our people aren't learning and growing and stretching, then our company is going to be constrained as well. And our company won't be growing like it should and like we want it to. So the problem that we have is that most founders, most CEOs and leaders of small and medium-sized businesses don't have the resources to do this, to develop emerging leaders. And oftentimes they just don't know how to do it. They don't know how to go about it. They don't know what steps to take. So I thought what I would do first is talk about what it means for someone to grow. What does it mean for me to grow as a person, as a leader? And because at the end of the day, that phrase gets bantered around so much that we really need to define what that means and what does it look like. So for me, what it means is learning new skills, learning skills of leadership that will help me to both grow in my area of responsibility, but also help me to begin to understand what it means to grow other people. It means also to expand my comfort zone. That means being given responsibilities where I'm actually going to probably fail at the first attempt and being okay with that. So growing means learning new skills. It also means helping people to get outside of their comfort zone, giving them responsibilities that they've never done before so that they can fail, get up, and learn and grow and keep moving forward. That then leads to gaining confidence. So when people try new things, expand their comfort zone, they fail, but they recognize that they can get back up, they can learn from that mistake or that challenge, and that gives them confidence because they see that they're capable of being resilient. They're capable of getting back up and trying again. I always use this analogy. It's like riding a bicycle. People, when you were a child, likely you were a child when you learned how to ride a bike. You got on the bike and you really didn't know what you were doing, and so you stepped on the pedals and you got pushed maybe, and you didn't know that you needed to run the pedals super fast or whatever the case may be, and you fall down. You got back up, and the next time you tried it again. Eventually you're riding a bike and you're gaining confidence that you can learn and do things that you're capable of riding a bike. So that confidence is so valuable for every emerging leader, for every leader, for that matter. And the other thing that I think growth is it's all about getting a bigger vision for myself, a bigger vision for our emerging leaders, for their career, for their growth trajectory, for their growth path, even for their personal life. I mean, I think that having a bigger vision for your personal life is something that sometimes people don't get exposed to. I was recently working with a client in a rural community, and this rural community is typically not, or in the past, hasn't given their female leaders the ability to understand that they have more, they can do more, they can be more. And so having the opportunity to have a vision for their growth and for their personal life even was awakening for them. And that is, I think, growth as well, being able to see things bigger than I did before. So growth is expanding my vision. And growth also is just a willingness to try new things, a willingness to get away from the status quo, to try things that I've never tried before. That's personal growth. That's taking something that I learned maybe intellectually, put it into practice, and try that new skill out, whether that's speaking, whether that's coaching, whether that's asking good questions. But it's a willingness to go beyond the status quo. It's a willingness to do something new that I've never done before. So to me, those are the things that encompass growth. Whether we're doing something new for the first time, we're getting confidence, we're having a new or bigger vision for our life and for our leadership, and simply just learning new skills. I think those are the things that encompass growth and leadership growth in particular. So let me talk for a second about what led to us at Impact Leadership starting the Emerging Leader Inner Circle, because that's really where all of my efforts around helping emerging leaders to grow started. And so I guess the best question to consider is what led to the start of the Emerging Leader Inner Circle. And it really was a recognition that there were people in organizations who were put into leadership that they didn't have the skills and the abilities to really lead others. They didn't have the ability to develop others. They didn't have the ability to coach others. And quite frankly, a lot of times they didn't have the confidence. They just got it put into a position without those skills and abilities and without the support from their leadership team. So it really was an opportunity for us to be able to come alongside our clients, come alongside our leaders that we were working with, and help them, and especially when it comes to culture development. So we have done a lot of work with culture development and And culture really is a leadership function. At its core, it's really all about leading the way we want people to do things around us. So culture is a leadership function. It really, if you want to create and you want to sustain a culture of high performance, it takes intentional effort, and it takes leaders who are able and who are capable at every level of leadership to be able to really lead the culture and to be very intentional with the rituals and the habits around the behaviors that the organization has set out for their success. Culture also takes leaders who can build other people and develop other leaders. The things that I talked about that encompass growth, you have to know how to help leaders and other people to grow if you're going to be leading a culture that is high performing. And so we recognized that there was an opportunity to develop leaders, and we developed a program called the Emerging Leader Inner Circle that gave the opportunity for leaders of all kinds, from all different industries, different backgrounds, to come together and really learn the skills that will help them to grow. And so we've been doing that for 6 years now. And really what we found is that there was an increased opportunity to develop the next generation of leaders. Interestingly, an emerging leader is not always a next generation leader. In other words, not a younger leader. Sometimes an emerging leader is someone who maybe late in their career has begun to grow. Maybe they've developed a growth mindset and they've started to grow themselves. Maybe they began reading books, and maybe they started listening to podcasts and began the process of growing themselves. So it doesn't always have to be a next generation leader or a younger leader. However, what we found was there's an opportunity to develop the next generation of leaders because, quite frankly, there's a lot of baby boomers and Gen Xers who are leaving the workforce, and they haven't properly prepared the millennial generation and the Gen Zs for being able to lead and to grow other people and grow a company. So we recognized that there was an opportunity. So that was another reason why we developed the Emerging Leader Inner Circle. And in the process, what was interesting is that I found my why in the process. I discovered why I wanted to help other leaders and help leaders really develop their culture, help them to help other leaders to grow. It was because I was one. At a certain point in my career, I got thrust into leadership. Some of you know my story. I was a business partner with my dad from an early age, really, from my early 20s. My dad and I built an insurance agency, an insurance brokerage agency. And my dad took a different approach to learning. He helped me to learn by observing. One of the things that he did is he paired me up with an experienced insurance agent so that he could teach me the processes of selling, of being with clients and being with prospects and how to handle myself on the telephone. And so his approach was to let me learn by observing, which was great. I definitely learned that way. But I also know that I could have grown faster and maybe even had a more a foundation if I had a structured approach. But quite frankly, my dad let me lead in my area of gifting. So eventually, as we grew the agency, I discovered that I really enjoyed the finance approach or the finance part of the business and the operations. And so I developed a commission payment system that was based on Lotus 1-2-3, which is really kind of the precursor to Excel today. But I I focused on my area of strength, and that was the accounting and the operations a part of our business. And that was great. I would have benefited, though, if I had a structured approach, if I had a structured learning environment where I could try out my learning skills or my leading skills and learn those leadership skills and be able to coach some of the team members that we had and even just get feedback on my own performance. So my discovery then through this process was that I was an emerging leader who could have used a program like what I developed. And so when I came into this company and built Impact Leadership Consulting, I wanted to be able to create a way for people who are like me, who wanted a chance to grow and to learn and have a structured environment and a safe environment where they could grow their leadership skills to do exactly that. So, just being able to learn, being able to do the skills, fail, get up, be resilient, and learn again, and then gain experience and gain confidence. That was really why I wanted to develop the Emerging Leader Inner Circle. So why focus on emerging leaders? Well, one of the things that I discovered is that small and medium-sized businesses are at risk. They're at risk from many different areas, but if you've been in the marketplace for any length of time over the last, say, 5 years, you recognize that turnover is a big risk to every business. The top risk really for any business is succession and succession planning. And so when we have turnover, when a key employee leaves, it leaves a big gap and it leaves a hole to fill. And if we don't have the leaders who are prepared to step up and to fill in that gap, those high performers or high potentials aren't going to be able to fill in the gap if we haven't prepared them. So just remember that the risk of your company, the major risk for your company is not developing your leaders, because succession planning and turnover is a huge cost. I saw a Gallup poll that estimated that turnover costs a company 200% of the employee's salary. And I don't know if that's right or not, but even if we cut that in half and say, it's 100% of an employee's annual salary, that's big. That's really big for small and medium-sized businesses, especially where turnover could be really high. If you have a 30 or 40 or maybe even a 50% turnover rate, wow, you can do the math on that. And the other thing I think that some business owners don't recognize too is that the risk to reduced product quality. So whether it's a product or whether it's a service, there was a McKinsey study that showed that high turnover really impacts product quality. So product quality, service quality is all impacted, and that's a huge cost as well to the business, and it's also a huge risk if you have a product and it fails in the quality. You have returns, you have bad press, you have, especially in this day and age of social media, you have bad word of mouth. And everyone knows that word of mouth is our best advertising. So if that's poor, then that's a huge risk to our organization as well. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about here in this part of why building emerging leaders is so important, it's because the time to replace an employee and their lost knowledge, I think is priceless. I mean, if you have an employee who has been with the organization for any length of time and you lose that, you lose some institutional knowledge. And if you haven't put into place ways of capturing that information, create standard operating procedures, for example, you are going to lose that when somebody leaves. And so keeping people around and attracting top talent is one of the keys to the reasons why you want to build into your emerging leaders. One of the questions that I got to often was, hey, can't our emerging leaders, can't they just learn by experience and watching others, kind of like what my dad did for me? And I think that that's an easy mistake to make, that they could watch other people. While I know that I benefited from that approach, I also know that my dad matched me up with somebody who was really good. He was a high performer. He was a star. And the mistake I think that some leaders make in this process is, who are your people watching? Who are they mimicking? Who are they emulating the high performers, or are they emulating the people that you may really want to them not be emulating? So one of the other challenges that just learning by experience and watching others has is really, how much time do your high performers have to mentor and to coach? If they have the time, that's great. But oftentimes high performers are single contributors, and they don't have time to mentor. So being able to put your emerging leaders into an environment where they're specifically poured into and mentored and coached makes a lot of sense. The other thing about this as well is some leaders have never really developed other leaders. And so I think that putting a mentor and a mentee relationship together without properly preparing that mentor could be a real challenge, because if they've never done it before, they may not necessarily know what to do. And they may be teaching people their way, but it's not a great way or it's not sustainable. It may work for them, but it may not necessarily work for others. So having a formal plan to develop your emerging leaders actually will attract top talent, and it'll also keep them, your good talent, your high performing talent, and your high potentials with your organization, and reduce your turnover, which is just huge. One of the questions that I've been asked as well, and I think it's a fair question. What if we develop all of these leaders and they leave? I mean, let's face it, the average time with a company isn't a career, isn't 40 years, isn't 30 years. So if we develop these people and they leave, isn't that like throwing money down the drain? And I think that's the wrong question. I think the right question is, or a better question is, what if I don't develop my people? What if I don't develop those emerging leaders and they stay? What happens then? I've got a stunted leader. I've got a stunted growth of a leader who isn't gonna grow and develop and isn't gonna really help my company to go to where I want it to go. So I would just encourage you to give that some thought. So if I invest in people and they leave, then I've done what I could to be able to help that person grow. And quite frankly, I think that's a better approach, because if you develop them, if you help them to grow, they're more than likely going to stay around a lot longer than if you don't develop them and if you don't pour into them. So I'm really passionate about this topic, especially because there are people in my generation. I'm at the tail end of the baby boomer generation, and I know there's others in the Gen X generation. They're leaving the workforce, and they're leaving the workforce in droves. And our next generation just hasn't been properly prepared. I see it all the time. I see it in organizations where leaders don't know how to ask great questions. They don't know how to make good presentations. They don't know how to talk off the top of their head and speak extemporaneously. And so I'm really passionate about this, and I think it's a really important topic, especially as so many people are getting ready to retire. Founders of businesses are either going to shut their businesses down, which if they do that, they lose all of the built-in value that's in the business, the equity, if you will. That just goes away. Sure, they could probably sell their inventory if they're a product type of business, but that's not where the high value comes. So really the question is, what can you do? What can you do to help your emerging leaders? And so if you're at a place where you can take some notes, I think this is a place where you might be able to take a few notes, because the first thing I believe that you have to do is you have to help them to become self-aware. And self-awareness comes from taking personality assessments, different kinds of assessments. There's the DISC, there's the Myers-Briggs, there's the Enneagram, there's the predictive index, there's the Colby. There's a whole lot of different assessments to give them the tools to be able to understand their personality, how they typically communicate, how they think, how they like to work. And that really all comes under the heading of learning themselves. So our first module in our Emerging Leader Academy is all about learning themselves, because so oftentimes we go through school, we go through college and university, and we learn all of these facts and we learn all of these things that aren't really related to learning ourselves. And so I think that that's a really important first step. So help them become self-aware, help them to increase their self-awareness by giving them some tools like the personality assessments. The second thing you would really want to do is teach your leaders the behaviors of discipline and performance. And we call this leading themselves. So first I've got to learn myself. I've got to learn how I normally and typically operate and what gives me energy. And then I've got to be able to lead myself, because clearly I can't lead others unless I can lead myself and lead by example. So one of the best ways to do that is to first and foremost create those behaviors of discipline and performance, articulate what they are. I mean, some of the ones that we use are, listening generously, speaking straight, practicing blameless problem solving, getting clear on expectations, setting clear expectations. So leading themselves, leading ourselves is the second component of a development program. The third thing really is to give your leaders the skills of leading others, like coaching skills. I mean, you don't have to be a professional coach, but you do have to have the ability to hold a coaching conversation. One of the things that we do here at Impact Leadership is we partner with my good friend Andy Hall, and he has a program called Leader as a Coach. And that program gives leaders the ability to gain coaching skills. And in that program, we help them to ask good questions. We help them to build their coaching conversation practice. And that then helps them to really increase their confidence. The other thing that we do in the segment where we're teaching leaders to lead others is that we help them to communicate. We help them to learn speaking skills. Specifically, I love the skill of just talking off the top of your head. It's called extemporaneous speaking. One of the things that I benefited from immensely was when I went through Toastmasters training. So part of the Toastmasters meeting is called Table Topics. And Table Topics is simply you're given a topic and then you have to come up with a 1 or 2 minute talk based on that topic. It's such a valuable skill. I've learned so many so many opportunities to be able to speak off the top of my head, whether it was in a business meeting, whether it was on a podcast, whether it was being interviewed. But those skills of speaking in front of others and speaking on their and thinking on their feet is so important. One thing I forgot was giving feedback. Being able to give feedback is an important skill that you need to have to be able to lead others. And so that's a component that we teach both in the Emerging Leader Group, Emerging Leader Academy, as well as the Leader as a Coach program that we partner with Andy on. So thinking like a leader, speaking like a leader, and giving feedback and communicating like a leader is a key component. Those are all key components for leading others. And so the last component, the last part of our program is leading through challenges. And so being able to look for and embrace different perspectives is one of the skills that we teach in the Emerging Leader Academy, because anytime you approach a challenge, we have to be able to find ways to see things from a different perspective. So asking possibility type questions. What could we do? How might we approach this? Those questions help leaders to be able to approach challenges from a perspective that may not be their own. And so seeing things from a number of different perspectives is so helpful to lead through challenge. The other thing that I'll say here too is a skill that we often teach in the Emerging Leader Academy is to look ahead and anticipate. Anytime that we can look ahead and anticipate a challenge or a problem, that's going to give us the best opportunity to lead through it that we possibly can. So leading through a challenge is an important component of developing your emerging leaders. So those four areas, I think, are a great way to take your leaders through a process. Now, if you don't have the resources and you don't want to do it yourself, I can help you with that. I do hope that some of this information today has been helpful for you. I hope, though, that it's piqued your interest, because we do have a program that I have really just recently redesigned and reimagined. I've referenced it several times, Emerging Leader Academy, and it goes together with the Emerging Leader Inner Circle. So if this has piqued your interest, please reach out to me. You don't have to do this on your own. You don't have to try to figure this all out. We've got it figured out. We've had success over the last 6 years of developing emerging leaders. And so, and we've been hard at work at creating this new approach and creating the approach that we feel are going to really help both existing senior leaders to hand off to the next generation of leaders, as well as really preparing those next generation of leaders and emerging leaders to be ready to step in when they're called on and when they're given the opportunity. So make sure that you watch for our newly updated Emerging Leader Academy. We're going to do some special holiday offers coming up in just a few weeks. So be sure to watch not only our channel here, the podcast. We'll announce some of these the offers on the podcast, as well as on YouTube and on our social media platforms. So at the end of the day, what this will do for your company and for you as a leader is it's going to give you the opportunity really to protect yourself against the risk of losing your most valued asset, and that is your emerging leaders, your high potentials. And so I just wanted to make sure that I help you to protect yourself from that risk. I've been in the insurance business for a long time, and so protecting risk is an important component of my mindset. And so I wanted to be able to give you some tools that you could use and really even think about as you prepare to protect your company, to protect your team from the risk of not developing your emerging leaders. So thank you so much for tuning in. I do hope this is helpful for you. Be sure to subscribe, because next week we've got a guest. I already told you his name, Stephen Adele. He's going to give you the tools to not just only grow your company, but he's going to give you tools to scale your company. And I know that you're going to not want to miss that conversation. Stephen is a brilliant teacher. He's an adjunct faculty member at the University of Denver in Denver, Colorado. And I know you're not going to want to miss it. So make sure that you go out and hit subscribe. All right, that's all for me for now. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, keep in that growth space and be well.